afternoon, everybody. We're just going to let everybody take a few minutes to sign on, and we'll get started in a minute. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allison Pizatowski, and I will be your moderator for this special topic series. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to send me a message through your webinar side panel. We've set aside several points throughout this session to go over any questions you may have. That being said, thanks for taking the time to join us. Next slide. To start this series off, backed by popular demand is our first topic of trip generation. In the following webinar, we're going to discuss trip generation and how it relates to the Transportation Impact Handbook, as well as a recently completed trip generation report on the characteristics of discount and home improvement superstores, major distribution centers, and small box stores. As of right now, we have 3 other webinars scheduled for this series. The next session will cover internal capture, and since it closely relates to what we're discussing today, this session is scheduled for next week. If you haven't already done so, you can register for all of the sessions at the Transportation Impact Handbook website. At the end of March, we'll continue the series with the topic of calculations, and in mid-April, we'll cover the much anticipated topic of modeling. As for other sessions, directly following this webinar, you'll be prompted to complete a survey. We are looking for your input on any other topics of interest that we should look into covering for this series. It's a really short survey, so it shouldn't take you very long to fill out. Although they may not all be speaking during today's webinar, I'd like to go ahead and introduce you to your panelists. From FDOT, we have Gary Socolow, Tim Smith, and Gina Bognani. And from Wilbur Smith, we have Martin Guttenplan, Holly Monroe, and myself, Allison Pizatowski. Okay, well, I'm now going to go ahead and turn things over to Gary Socolow to start things off for our trip generation discussion. Gary?
Hey, thank you. This is Gary Socolow, and since we have a lot of material to cover about the very comprehensive study that was done for us by Wilbur Smith, I'm just going to go briefly over the resources that we have currently in the Transportation Impact Handbook, and the website is up there. It's FDOT transportationimpacthandbook.com, and not only do we have the handbook, but the website has a lot of material on it which can give you the basics. And before I go any further, I'd like to know how many have gone to our handbook or our handbook site for any information yet. Now we'll launch this poll, and yeah, I know some of you might be sitting with a group. It makes it a little bit difficult to answer some of these poll questions, and I do understand. So if you're near the computer with a group, you can just answer what you think the majority of your attendees are. All right. I would say we have enough here to give us an idea. And let me share the results with you right now. You can see a great majority of you, 72%, said yes, you have already gone to the handbook. So thank you, and I appreciate you thinking about us for your issues as they deal with transportation planning and site impact. Let me just, for some of you who may not know, this portion here is the top portion of the page on the Transportation Impact Handbook. And under training, you will find some extra information that could be very useful to you. And if you scroll down, you'll see this information on session 2 of our original webinar series. And under each of these sessions, you'll see materials that we have. And some of these materials are interactive and some are animated also. This Trip Generation Basics and Pitfalls is a basic transportation trip generation presentation, and when you click on it, you will see a page that looks like this, and this actually has every slide that I use in my live presentations. It has all the narration, and if you choose these slides, you can go right to what a particular slide has, and so in a period of 30 minutes or so, you can have a good background in the basics of trip generation and some of the pitfalls to watch out for. Also, to let you know it exists, you'll see something that says Trip Generation Excel Spreadsheet. This is not anything that was put together solely by Florida DOT, but this was worked on by a group of people actually around the country who are interested in having an Excel spreadsheet with the 8th edition trip generation rates in it. If you're to click on that link, you will go to the Access Management website, and you'll see a link for this spreadsheet. And as I said, we can't vouch for the absolute accuracy of it. Matter of fact, we've made it better by people using it and telling us where there's been some problems. All right. Now, not only have you, a bunch of you have gone to the website and to find information, I'd like to know how many of you have actually gone to the website and viewed any of those presentations that we have done, because we think they're particularly useful, and you can learn on your own, and you're never late for class. And just wondering. Okay. All right. Going to close and share this with you. You can see that a majority of you have not gone, but I'm pleased that such a large group has actually gone and viewed some of the presentations. And with that, I really do want to encourage you to go to the website, and we're always organizing it and reorganizing it, trying to make it better. But if you have the time, spend a little time on it. You might find some good educational gold in there for anything related to impact analysis. And with that, are there any questions that you might have related to just the basic trip generation that would be in our, talked about in our handbook, or any general questions on trip generation that I could try to answer?
And at this time, we've received no questions.
Okay, so be thinking of them, type them in, and we want this to be interactive as possible. And so just let us know what your concerns and questions are, and we will get to them as we go through this webinar. Now, with that, I am going to hand off the keyboard and mouse control to Martin, and this way you now have power over this presentation and my computer.
Okay, so I can theoretically control your computer. Is that
Right.
what you're saying?
It's more than theoretical.
Okay. I just clicked and nothing happened.
Yeah, it just sometimes takes a few moments.
Okay, we're going to have one of those days. Okay, folks, thank you very much. This is Martin Guttenplan speaking. We'll tell you a little bit about the research we just completed for FDOT, take questions. Hopefully your questions will spur some interesting discussion, and hopefully you'll find this of some use to you in your day-to-day work. We called this study the Trip Generation of discount home improvement stores, superstores, major distribution centers, small box stores, etc. But we're essentially talking about emerging land uses or land uses that we've seen quite a bit of change with over the years, over the recent years. And we'll
Just
see
just have some patience. It will eventually move.
Okay, I've done down arrow, I've done page down, now I'll try click.
All right. I tell you what. Yeah. I'll take back the
Take back controls.
the controls, and we'll see if it works any faster if I do the.
Oh, okay.
All right. Happy to do it. Just tell me when you want me to go to the next slide, Martin.
Sure. So looking at this from a different way, an angle using the chart here. So what we were looking for, the best trip generation numbers in Florida for these uses. The freestanding discount superstores, ITE Land Use 813, home improvement superstores, your Lowe's and Home Depots, ITE 862, and then our two new and emerging land uses, small box stores and major distribution centers. Hey, I like that, Gare.
Hey, anytime.
Next. So this gobbledygook, we're talking for land use 813, we're talking about Walmarts, super Walmarts, and super Targets. And these are the variety that have at least have the grocery store added. Next slide. And home improvement superstores, most of you who are homeowners are very familiar with. What was once a hardware store is now the everything store. Okay, continue please. So what is a small box store? No, it's not a big box. There is no ITE code, but essentially we were looking at freestanding Family Dollar stores and Dollar Generals. Next, please.
Okay.
But not a Dollar Tree, which is or a variety like that where it's a 99-cent store. They're quite different. Next. And Gary.
Yeah, if you want, the small box stores have intrigued me. This is Gary Sokolow again since the beginning. Not only because I love shopping, but also if you follow marketing news, you'll find that they've made very large inroads into the market that was once just being completely taken over by the large box stores like Walmart, and they're actually, unlike Walmart right now, they're actually expanding at a much greater pace, and it just intrigued me why a small store like that would be so popular. And then as I read about it, I realized that the small box stores really are the true descendants of the old five and dime stores and the old general stores, and carry a large uh, array of items in there, from stationery to even some clothes and cleaning supplies and hardware. It's really like the old five and dime and general stores. And so I just wanted to show you that this is a Woolworth store, which you no longer find in the United States, and Cress stores. Now, all the pictures that you see here are from Florida. This one here at the bottom right is from Key West. This is a Cress store that is from Tampa. Now, the nice thing is that even though it's probably office space now, they've never taken down the beautiful architecture from Cress. And this is one that I'm very familiar with in downtown Orlando. Last time I looked, it was part of Orlando Community College. But again, and it was the five dime and quarter cent stores. And so they have a large history, and they seem to be coming back in the form of Dollar General and Family Dollar. Okay, Martin.
So distribution centers. There really is no ITE land use code that covers these. These are really 1 million square foot centers with, and the ones that we were studying are really single retailer distribution centers. Less, it's really not a warehouse, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that next. It's not a small distribution center or a small warehouse, with just a few loading docks and where the merchandise typically stays a while. Next.
Okay, I have a slide which is a poll question here, and the question is, have you ever done or reviewed a traffic study with a major distribution center? And I ask this question because I know one of the reasons we did this study is that we here in Tallahassee know that there are have been some controversies over the issue of large distribution centers, because there, as Martin said earlier, there is no specific ITE use for major distribution centers, and we're a long state with quite a few major distribution centers. So going to see here. All right. The majority of you have voted. I'm going to close this poll. And you'll see that approximately 35% of you have either reviewed, done, or maybe planning to review a study which includes a large distribution center like a large Walmart or Family Dollar distribution center. We just know that they've been controversial because of the arguments over how much traffic they really produce. And so thank you. All right, Martin.
Okay. So to start with, we looked at the literature, and there were a couple of ITE journal articles. Back in the boom time of say around 2006, we were finding Trip Generation's rates higher than what ITE had for Land Use 813, which are the discount superstores. And it came back down a little bit in 2009, I think, as the economy cooled a little bit. But one of the things that really got us going on this study is FDOT District 7 did a study of home improvement and discount superstores in the Central Florida area, and their numbers were dramatically different than ITE. 25% higher rates on the discount superstores, 60% higher on the home improvement superstores. And with such differences, it really became clear that it was worth taking another look. Also, as we mentioned earlier, these small box stores are coming around quite a bit. Polk County did a study in 2008. They looked at 3 different sites for a Dollar General that was coming in. And then Putnam County in 2006 did a study on a couple of distribution centers in the state for one that was getting ready to go in there. We also studied, looked at one that TxDOT did in about a year ago. They looked at, I believe it was 9 or 10 distribution centers all over Texas, none in Florida, and these were really as much warehouses as distribution centers. And when we go through the numbers, you'll see how they differ. Next, please. So in terms of selecting these sites, one of we were seeking geographic diversity. We spoke with representatives from all of the FDOT districts, and then we also wanted to get sites that were common to the FDOT District 7 study so we could see how those numbers changed over time. We thought we had it licked. We had a nice site list, and fortunately we had backup sites as well, because many of our sites were disqualified due to through traffic through the sites, where people were literally using the site as a shortcut to get from one road to another. We also needed to get permission from the major distribution centers, because we were putting tubes down for 7 days, and they got kind of suspicious when they saw them that long. So we spoke with the distribution centers directly, and anywhere we were doing pass-by studies, we needed to get either local and or corporate approval. So all those fed into the choice of sites, and as you can see from the map, we did a pretty good job, I thought, of capturing some of the diversity around the state. Next, please. Ultimately, we got good results for 20 freestanding discount superstores, 10 home improvement superstores, 15 small box stores, and 9 distribution centers. These numbers are relatively high compared to many of the ITE land uses in trip generation, where numbers of studies are often, there are 2 or 3 and need to be used with caution. So we wanted to make sure that whatever we did, we had enough of a sample size that the results would be valid. Next, please. Questions so far?
At this time, we have one question from Edward Cant. Can you please go over the specific difference between Dollar General and Dollar Tree?
Sure. A Dollar Tree, everything in the store is set at 99 cents, whereas a Family Dollar or a Dollar General, there's a whole wide range of prices. So you can't find everything you need at a Dollar Tree. It's kind of like a lottery or a bargain sale. There's certain things that are always there, like candy and certain food items, but you can't go there with a certain assurance that you're going to walk out with what you anticipate going there for. And so they're just a different type of land use. Gary, is there anything else you want to add on?
Just from personal experience, would have to just, agree with you there that going back to the idea that the general dollar and family dollar stores are really the general stores of the day. If you needed a hammer for some serious hammering, but didn't want to go to Lowe's, you really couldn't find one at the Dollar Tree, and if you did, it would break on you the first time you tried to use it. The same can be said for a screwdriver, and because I know they do have them there, eventually you would realize that if you want some cheap stuff or candy, that's where you go. But that is why Dollar General, in my opinion, and Family Dollar are doing so well. They fit that gap between the Dollar Tree and the larger stores. And matter of fact, I think you will find that the CVS and Walgreens are actually trying to take part of that market from them also, being a general store, because you can actually buy a decent hammer at a CVS or a decent pair of pliers. But that's just from my own personal experience.
To continue from that, if you did a study of the Dollar Tree stores, do you believe it would be significantly different from the others? Do you think it would skew the results significantly?
I think that if we, and we had discussed this, Ed, that we would have to find the standalone Dollar Tree to do, because I believe that they are different and would have different peaking characteristics. Matter of fact, it is something that in the future we may actually study. Those of you that have followed our work here will know that one of the reasons we're having this webinar is the fact that we're very proud to finally be back in the business of collecting data on trip generation after all of the for many years, since like 1986, we have not done any. So the Dollar Tree is definitely, in my opinion, I think we would find some different peaking characteristics. One of the hard things, as Martin has mentioned, is trying to find one that you can isolate from the rest of the stores around it. And sometimes that's not easy to find. So I see there's another question about the Aldi stores. James, that's a very good question. Aldi is a discount grocery store that I know is in maybe Sarasota and Orlando right now. The reason I know that is because we thought of this also as maybe one of the uses for our next studies. They're just like the Dollar General, and they're actually increasing their market share and developing very quickly in the state of Florida. And so we really don't know anything about it other than surprisingly more successful than I ever thought they would be. So these are definitely something that we are discussing about studying in the future.
If any of you have strong feelings about that and would like us to be studying those, please make that known either through the chat feature or phone call, email, whatever, because we are we are considering those. Moving along. So going through the different characteristics by land use. We'll start with the freestanding discount superstores. Now these differ from ITE Land Use 815, which is a freestanding discount store, because the superstores have the full-service grocery store. As a result, they have a larger footprint than just a freestanding discount store. The sites that we looked at varied from 125 to 240,000 square feet. The Walmarts typically were greater than 200,000 square feet, and there was one Target we studied just because it had been studied earlier, and the super Targets are significantly smaller than the Walmarts. We found quite a bit of variation on counts, varying between 1,900 to 6,000 vehicles entering the site during a 24-hour period. Next. Holly did a pretty thorough analysis of the data for us, put together these charts. All the scatter charts reflect our data, not ITE's, even though she made them look just like ITE's. We found that the average weekday daily generation rate was 45.41 vehicles per 1,000 square feet gross leasable area. And then the PM peak of the adjacent street, 3.56 per 1,000 square feet. And the PM peak of the generator, 3.76. And we'll show that in relation to some of the other studies on the next slide. Next slide. There we go. And I guess the biggest thing in terms of this land use category that we saw was that there was a marked decline in the average counts, about 40% from the FDOT District 7 study from 2007. Also, if we looked at our values, they were about 15% lower than ITE Land Use 813, 8th edition. So what we're looking at here is a decline over time. If you look at District 7 with 76.7 vehicles per 1,000 square feet, and then over time watching it go down to the current rate that we found of 45.41. And okay, next. Moving on to the home improvement superstores. These were, there was less variation among these than in a lot of different ways than there was with the discount superstores. With these sites were pretty close to each other, 100,000 to 138,000 square feet. The Lowe's were on the higher, and the Lowe's stores were on the higher end of the range. The Home Depot's on the lower end of the range. No puns intended there. And the driveway counts were much more in line with each other, with 1,700 to 2,500 vehicles entering or exiting a site during a 24-hour period. And the peak hour for these, in terms of the generator peak hour, fell usually midday between 11 and 2. Next. And if we look at the scatter charts, weekday trip generation 31.5 vehicles per 1,000 square feet. PM peak of the adjacent street 2.31 vehicles per 1,000 square feet. And PM peak of the generator 3.03 per 1,000 square feet.
This is Gary, and I'm looking at some of the questions coming in.
Oh, good.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the comments Ed Kant has made is the low R squared that you will find at the bottom right of this page. And really, the only answer we have to this right now is the fact that if this were to become a page in the ITE, we probably wouldn't even have a fitted curve with an R square that is that low. So, what we would recommend at this point well, actually, this is probably a good time to talk about it. We sent out a poll on desires for new trip generation studies, and somebody was concerned that we would be proposing something different than ITE and just making the field more confusing, when in fact the plan here really is to share this data with ITE to increase their database, not to create our own database. And that's not to say to ignore what Florida data we got here, and as a for informational purposes. I don't see us creating our own data for use, but this is really just trying to show you what we found in the study. We plan to share all of this data with the Institute of Transportation Engineers for a journal article, and also to be included in the next possible update. So to allay anybody's fears that we're just trying to compete with ITE, we are not. So in this case, for the studies that were done, there doesn't seem to be a fitted curve kind of relationship, because that's what R square is just how strong the relationship is in this case between the square footage and the number of trips.
And square footage was chosen as the variable for all of these studies because it's something that's relatively easy to get hold of, and it's consistent with what's been done before. It may or may not be the best descriptive variable, but that's we're going for consistency rather than getting the best possible number per se, so that others can easily replicate and use the data. Going back to the superstores, again, we saw another decline of about 40% since the 2007 study. However, the 2010 values were very similar to what is in currently in ITE 862 8th edition. Next. We talked about small box stores quite a bit already, but the sites that we chose, with the exception of a couple, were right around 10,000 square feet. And in looking at the literature and some anecdotal conversations with folks, we found that what was being used for these stores was either land use 814, specialty retail in the bottom arrow, or land use 820, which is the shopping center, or even land use 815, which is the freestanding discount store. That's without the grocery store. 820 and 815 are much larger land uses than these 10,000 square feet small box stores. Next, please.
Okay, and with this, we have another poll question, and this is in regards to the Dollar General type stores. And what I would like to ask you is that if you have had a problem knowing what to use when a new Dollar General or Family Dollar or Ben Franklin moved into your community, and you had to figure out what to use. So just want to know, because in my world of access management and permitting, I know that it has come to me a number of times, and I've had no good answer other than to say use shopping center or use the rate, but not the formula or for the shopping center. And I'm going to give you a few more moments here. Okay, I'm going to close the polls right now, and I'm going to share the results with you. And you know, a good percentage of you, actually a majority of you, had a problem with this, and it really gets back to that whole entire issue of the fact that it's a very popular land use right now, and they are in fact expanding in the state of Florida. And one of the bright spots in our employment news recently is that they're doing major hiring right now. So that's another reason why we really wanted to try to get a good handle on the trip generation of these uses. Okay, back to you, Martin.
Okay, so with these small box stores, these really have a pretty high generation rate per 1,000 square feet of 64 vehicles per 1,000 square feet. So that's, you know, if you multiply that out to 10,000, so that's 640 vehicles in a day. And these are not 24-hour operations, so they're big generators. PM peak of the adjacent street, 6.82. PM peak of the generator, 6.99. Again, they show quite a bit of generation. Next, please. So in comparison to some of the other land use types and studies, this chart shows the study we just did. If you compare it with the study in Polk County of the 3 sites, the numbers we had were somewhat less. The Polk County study, 81 weekday trips, weekday daily trips per 1,000 square feet. And then if you go to the ITE numbers, starting at 814 specialty retail, that one, it's 44.32 per 1,000 square feet. And 820, the shopping center, 42.94 per 1,000 square feet. And even the freestanding discount store is less at 57.24. So you can see that if you had been using those other approximate numbers, they're quite a bit different than what we found in 2010. Next, please. We conducted some pass-by interviews at 5 of these sites, and the pass-by rate was relatively high. much as you would imagine for this type of land use. We found the average pass-by was 34%. Comparing that, and this was during the PM peak, if we compare that with the ITE freestanding discount store, which is only 23%, but it was, interestingly, it was very comparable to the ITE 820 shopping center. So if you put the pieces together here, they have a very high generation rate, but they also, to temper that in terms of new trips, they have a very high average pass-by rate as well. Next. Questions?
At this time we have one question. It's from Edward Can. Will you propose to ITE that they add the small box as a new and unique land use?
We'll send them the data, and I think we have a pretty compelling case that it should be considered, but ultimately it's ITE's decision.
Okay, we actually just got another question from Joseph Robario. Per the ITE handbook, did you combine the collected data with the ITE national data?
No. No, we have our data separate from theirs, so you can see the differences. We did. We'll see how ITE responds to this and what they do.
Right, and that's this is Gary Sokolow again, and that's the reason I made that statement a few moments ago that our intent here was never to compete with ITE, is to share the data with ITE. The reasoning behind this particular webinar was just to give you an insight into the study that we did, and not to say, well, these are the new numbers we're going to use for Florida. Okay, so I hope that you can put that idea to rest.
Okay, one more question from Lawrence Massey. Did the average trip length include, or was it adjusted per pass-by?
Trying to remember. We'll show the actual form we used for those surveys, and essentially we were asking them, I think, how far they had come from their destination, come from their origin to the little box, the small box store. We weren't going for a whole trip or anything like that, just the distance between the two. Holly, do you recall anything different?
I believe that's correct. I think we were just going for the distance between whatever their start destination was and the generator that we were studying, so the small boxes.
Thanks.
This is Gary again, and when it comes to the issue of trip length, this trip length data that was captured during these studies really was really more of a not very scientific. It was something to give us some anecdotal information. People were asked how far they came. This was probably as far as you can get from a scientific study of trip length. The main purpose of the interviewers here was pass-by. We just thought we could grab a little bit more data by asking them trip length. I would caution you about giving any of the trip length data that was captured in this study any sort of scientific validity greater than what we were thinking at the time, just wanting to get some anecdotal data.
Yeah, based on 5 sites. Next. Moving to the next category of land use, these are the large single-use distribution centers, single retailer. Currently, as we mentioned, there's no ITE land use code that we thought fit that category. Same idea with previous studies and anecdotal conversations. We found that land use 152, the high cube warehouse, or land use 150 warehouse were the ones that were being applied to these distribution center sites. The ones that we were looking at were much larger than recommended for the ITE high cube warehouse category, so it really very different type of use. In terms of size, the largest one we looked at was just under 1.5 million square feet. The smallest, not quite 500,000 square feet, but the bulk of them right around 1 million square feet. Next. With these, before we go into rates and all that, we did 7-day classification counts on that, so that we could capture and look at the data over 7 days to see if there was what type of difference the weekends were playing. We also wanted to get a look at the different peaking characteristics, and we also separated by vehicle type. In the summary report, we broke it down into basically cars and light trucks versus other heavy vehicles, so that we were able to take a look at the different characteristics of trucks versus smaller vehicles. And we found average weekday daily trip rate of 1.86 vehicles per 1,000 square feet, PM of the adjacent street 0.14 vehicles, and PM peak of the generator 0.17. These numbers may look kind of little, but then you remember you multiply them out to make that million square feet, and they become quite a bit larger, as the chart shows you in terms of average vehicle trip ends. So in comparison, this chart shows the comparison between the 2010 study with the Polk County study that was done in 2009, the Putnam County study, the Texas DOT study, and the ITE 152 high cube warehouse. And if you look at this, you can see that the 3 Florida studies are showing numbers quite a bit higher than ITE 152. For I guess what Gary's showing here is PM peak of the generator is quite similar, though. So the Polk County study, okay, let's keep moving, yeah. So this chart is on showing the truck traffic, which is the darker green lines versus the non-trucks. And we're looking at, for the truck traffic, it would peak just after the AM peak and just before the PM peak. And if you were running a distribution center, that's probably the way you would run it as well. You wouldn't want your peak truck traffic to coincide with the peak hours of regular traffic. The non-trucks were peaking at 5 to 6 a.m. and 7 to 8 a.m. and then also between 3 and 5 p.m. And the non-truck traffic, the peaks were much more dramatic, probably representing shift changes and the like for people working at these centers. Next. Before we move on, were there any questions about distribution centers?
We actually do have one question from James Ansell. Any application of passenger car equivalents for the truck traffic at distribution centers for large tractor trailers?
We didn't apply anything like that, no.
Yeah, this was not a capacity type study. It was strictly trip generation. However, we did classify into more categories of vehicle than we're even showing in this presentation, and that you can find in the data, which Holly will be talking about later.
Other questions?
Not at this moment.
Okay. So let's go into some of the other interesting findings that we came up with. So 3 of the superstore sites, freestanding discount superstore sites, were looked at both in 2007 and in the 2010 study. And those are the blue-gray sites on the chart below. And you can see the types of changes in traffic that we saw. In all cases, there was quite a bit of reduction from that 2007 study, ranging from 40% down to 15% change.
So Martin, what we're talking about is this percentage change is between the earlier Central Florida study and the most recent study. And those of you that don't know DOT very well, the CO stands for Central Office. That's up here in Tallahassee. So that's how we've differentiated by the one that was done in the Tampa area, by the Tampa area district, and the statewide one that was recently finished by the staff in Tallahassee.
And with the home improvement superstores, there was even a further reduction of 40% between the one store over time as well. Next. Another thing that jumped out at us, we don't necessarily know what to do with this information other than to pass it along. We noticed quite a bit of difference in the trip generation characteristics among the freestanding discount superstores between the Walmart and Super Target stores. In general, the Walmarts are larger than the Super Targets, and that could also have may have something to do with the difference in rates. If you look at the difference in Targets versus Walmarts, in weekday daily, there's a 35% difference going down to the PM peak of the generator of 25%. Holly, do you want to add anything here?
No, I think you covered it. That's just pointing out differences, and ITE can do with it what they will.
Yeah. And, we didn't do a whole market study showing, how much each person spent per trip, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure the numbers work out, but it's just kind of interesting from the trip generation perspective. Next. Some other things that we looked at, and we're just showing you a few of the things that we looked at. We looked at a lot of different things here. But in this case, we noticed some differences between what happened is we were trying to explain why the District 7 study of Central Florida sites was so much higher than ITE and so much higher than the statewide study that we did. So we pulled out the sites that were common to District 5 and common to District 7, which were the Central Florida studies, and compared them to the rest of the state. And if you look, for instance, under the District 5, well, where the red dot is on District 7, the rate for just the District 7 sites in 2010 was 57.6 versus the average statewide rate, which is in the bold if you move over a few columns, of 45.41. So the District 7 sites, at least on a daily basis, for freestanding discount superstores was 27% higher.
Let me, excuse me, this is Gary, and I just want to clarify something that those of us that have looked at these tables know, but some of you may not. In District 7, they did these studies back in 2007, 2008. So we went and went to the exact same sites. That's what's being discussed in this table here. So that's why it says District 7 sites, FDOT Central Office Study 2010. The actual District 7 study was done years earlier, but this is the comparison of those that were done in 2008 and those that were done in 2010. We just thought that would be the more interesting of the comparisons.
Actually, it's a little different than that, and I think what we'll do is when we're going to clarify these charts. Basically, if you look where it says District 7, if you just consider those Tampa Bay sites, this is all using 2010 data. Some of these, there are only three of those are common to the previous study. But basically what it's showing us is there is a higher trip generation rate for these freestanding superstores just in our own data set for the Tampa Bay area. And then if you go over to the left to the next column where it says District 5, we're looking primarily the Orlando and East Central Florida area. And those sites were showing also a slightly higher range of rates.
So please ignore everything I said. Okay.
As I say, we'll simplify these charts. I think I have a better way to explain this in the future. Again, what we were searching for was that part of the story of why the rates were so much higher when District 7 studied sites in 2007. And there may be some truth to it, but I think really the main driver is the economy. there's an interesting twist. If you would go back. On the small box stores, we were able to separate enough of them out in the Tampa Bay region. And when you compare the small box stores in the Tampa Bay area to the statewide numbers, we see that there is 20 to 25% lower trip generation rate for small box stores in the Tampa Bay area. So there could be a relationship between those two things, where we're seeing people making more of those types of trips in Tampa Bay to the discount supercenters rather than the small box stores, perhaps. But I just thought it was kind of interesting. Next. So in summary, what we found, there's a significant reduction in retail trip making in general since recent studies in Florida. Both the discount superstore and home improvement superstore rates we found were either lower or near the ITE rates. We feel that there's a case for making, there's easily make a case that the small box stores are a distinct land use. They're quite a bit, our study showed rates quite a bit higher than the ITE land uses that have been typically used. Potentially these have been underestimated in the past in trip generation studies for these sites, and there's also a high pass-by rate. Next. We also feel that trip generation rates for large single retailer distribution centers may also have been underreported in the past. Our results showed that the recent studies, our rates were quite a bit higher than those of the High Cube warehouse. And lastly, this is kind of the tip of the iceberg. There's a great amount of data available. We've put it all into spreadsheets that can be navigated. We've got the complete count information analysis. We also have bicycle, pedestrian, and transit counts for those urban areas or areas where there was that type of activity. Next. And Holly, I'll let you talk about some of the data screenshots.
Sure, thanks, Martin. Okay, like Martin was saying, these are just kind of the tip of the iceberg as far as the amount of data we did collect, and these screenshots just show some of the way we calculated and some of the charts, things like that. This first one you're looking at is from the truck data. We looked at the differences between, obviously these are the classification counts, the trucks and the non-trucks. And this is that chart that we showed in the presentation showing the hourly characteristics, but we also have data on daily peaks as well, things like that. Gary, next please. This is another one with truck data, a little more on distribution centers to get a more rounded look at the counts. We broke it down by each distribution center and looked at trucks versus non-trucks, and then also looked at ins and outs, peak hours, and broke things down into weekday versus Saturday, Sunday. Like Martin was talking about, we did our 7-day counts, so all this information is in there as well. Next. This is more generally on the trip generation rates. most of the data is broken down into three main parts. It's either counts, peak hour calculations, or rates. And this is kind of the summary file that shows if you take the counts in the square feet, you're going to calculate these rates, and this shows for the different land uses how it calculated the weighted, and it shows the daily rate and PM peak, things like that, and we have it for all of the different land uses in this sheet. Next. And as we were talking about in the small boxes, we have a little extra data on pass-bys and pedestrian bicycle counts. This shows the actual interview sheet to show what the interviewers actually used to talk to people at these stores to get the pass-by data. Next. Yes, and this shows the actual bicycle and pedestrian volumes that we have for each of those sites as well. Any of the sites we did a pass-by, I think we did bike and pedestrian counts just to get a more multimodal approach. But we have a lot more data as well, so is there any questions on the data?
There's actually just one question right now from Edward Cant. Were any demographic factors considered in reviewing the difference between the Walmart and super Target stores?
As far as I know, we didn't look at any demographics. We looked very specifically at the trip generation, and the most we went into detail on each store was square footage. So the area varies widely. We just tried to get a good sample statewide and did not look at some of the demographic characteristics around them to see if there was any differences that way. That might be something we can look into in the future.
Well,
And this is
actually, Holly, we did have a special counter that was tripped whenever a Lexus or a Mercedes went over it. I'm kidding.
This is Gary, and I'm sure that if you went into the marketing research, that you would probably find the reason that the Target stores are smaller is that they generate probably a higher amount of money per square foot. And I'm the only person I know that probably spends more money per square foot at a Walmart, just because I can't stop buying things there. But most, I think that you will find that the people that go there, the shoppers that go there, will spend a decent amount of money, even though it is a smaller store. But that's what you're raising is a problem that most of you professionals have really dealt with. When a Walmart wants to go in, and sometimes the neighborhood is upset, and then we would rather have a Target. But when it comes down to what do you use, we use this conglomeration of data that came from both Targets and Walmarts. So yeah, it's not an easy answer here, but they do operate differently, and that's pretty obvious from the size of the stores. So that's about as far as we got for any sort of demographics. We just do it based on what we know about our friends and our own shopping experiences.
Okay, we can keep going.
Okay.
Okay. Well, as I had mentioned earlier, when we end this webinar, you'll be prompted with a survey regarding potential other topics for this series. If you don't mind, please just take a few minutes and give us some ideas that you have that we can best meet your needs and interests for the future. Next slide. If you've previously attended any of our other Transportation Impact Handbook webinars, you may be aware that we make all of our presentations available under the Training tab on the Handbook website. We'll be continuing doing this with today's PowerPoint presentation, and we'll also make a recording of this session available. I'll also be providing an information list of all the materials we used and discussed, and you'll actually be getting a follow-up email tomorrow with data from this report that we were discussing today. Next slide. The next section in this topic series is internal capture, and it will take place on March 10th, starting at the same time as this webinar. Following internal capture on March 31st, we'll cover calculations, and then on April 14th, modeling. To register for any of these sessions, please visit the handbook website for more information. And if there are not any other questions or comments at this time, we're going to go ahead and end our session on trip generation.
Thank you very, very much for your time, patience with us, and hope to see you or hear from you in the next presentations we have on this. Send any of us questions that were not answered, and we will do our best to get back with you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.